All right. Well, once again, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Aplos webinar. Again, so glad that you are with us this morning, and we are super excited about what we have to present today. We have two special guests, which I'm going to introduce in just a minute. But we want to welcome you to Aplos webinar. Just for sake of some housekeeping, just real quick, if you are logged on, if you could just type in the question box, a couple of you, and just let me know that you can both see the screen in front of you and you can hear my voice. That would be great, so we can get going here. Good, super. Thank you, Allison, Tom. Good, great. Welcome, excellent. Very good. Cool. Thanks. Good. Welcome, Tim. All right. Good to see some names that I know have been on some of our other webinars. And gosh, it's great that you guys are with us. So with that, we're gonna get going here. Got some really fun stuff to cover. Just want to again remind everybody just kind of how our webinars work here. Of course, we're going to have some guests here in just a second. I'm super excited to introduce you to. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot today. But then at any time you can ask a question. But what we're going to do, because we have guests and our guests are actually from a different part of where I am, we'll wait to the very end and we'll do some Q&A. But I encourage you to go ahead and type in the questions once you think of it, because if you're like me, you'll probably forget it. So we'll just so at any time you can do that. So also just want to kind of remind you that in September I have another special announcement. Our webinar are usually on Tuesdays, but in September we're going to move it to September 7th. That's a Thursday, and we're going to have another special guest, a guy named Jay Frost. Jay is an awesome fundraising mind, just like the two guys that we're going to have today, Jeff and David. Sorry about that. And we're just super excited to share with you. And again, the purpose of our webinars are to educate you and to give you some tips and tools. And it's part of a service that we provide here at Software. My name is Dan Kimball. I'm a product specialist here at Aplos. And after spending about 20 years in the fundraising field, working as a development officer and doing a variety of different functions in fundraising, I had the opportunity to come to Aplos and work with Aplos in helping Aplos design and implement a donor management platform. So that's who we are. We're an accounting and donor management platform. You can certainly visit us at any time if you want more information or if you'd like to talk to me more about that. But that's not why we're here. We're really here today to meet two very special guests. I have never personally met Jeff and David, but I met them online and on the phone. I first heard Jeff as a guest on the Tony Marginelli radio show. Marginelli, I think is the way to say that. And I was so impressed. I read a lot of Lighthouse Counsel tweets. I read the content that they provide, and I've been very impressed. So I reached out to Jeff and I said, hey, I would love for you to share with our audience a little about your knowledge in the fundraising field. As you can see here on the screen, Jeff is a veteran nonprofit leadership. He's worked for the Y, which is a great organization. I know several people in that organization. And then if you do not know about Gerald Panis and Lindsay Partnership Group, they are phenomenal. So Jeff obviously comes with a huge credential set and is to be here. David Snow, 4 decades of experience in executive and development leadership, healthcare, education, and social services. So he's really hit the gamut. Also done some work with the YMCA, and gosh, led campaigns raising millions and millions of dollars. So I just want to remind folks that even if you represent a small nonprofit, don't let the large organization numbers intimidate you, because there's so much we can learn no matter the size of your organization. So with that, I don't want to bore you anymore. I'm going to go ahead and turn the dials over to Jeff, and Jeff's going to take over the control. Jeff and David, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, Dan, and good afternoon or good morning, everyone, and appreciate Dan and Aplos for allowing David and I to be with you today. We're very excited. This is something that we're passionate about, is is annual giving. And so look forward to a conversation with you today. It'll be fast paced and we'll have time for questions. And because we only plan about 30 minutes, we'd love to hear from you by email after the webinar. But we're looking at transforming annual giving, and it's increasing the number and size of annual gifts by really following best practices in 4 key areas. One is case development. The second is leadership development. And the third, plan development. And of course, great plan without execution is almost irrelevant. And so the fourth, of course, is execution. So these are the 4 foundations that we'll be discussing with you today. And one thing that we wanted to cover is just some language so we can have a common perspective, and that is annual giving versus annual campaign. And for at least the sake of our conversation today, we're going to say that annual giving is a year-round process, and that it really includes all phases of your annual fundraising, planning, recruiting and training of volunteers, major gift work, special events, stewardship, recognition, and thanking. So that's and every organization, of course, is different, but that is the framework of year-round activity in annual giving. And then when we talk about an annual campaign, and as Dan mentioned, we have different size organizations, on the call today, and how a major university orchestrates what they term an annual campaign is different than, say, a YMCA that David and I are very familiar with, or independent schools where you're actually, marshaling hopefully a large army or a small army of volunteers. So in an annual campaign, we say often time limited because for major universities and other institutions, it can be year round. But if you are marshaling volunteers in a model that is pretty familiar to folks, again, independent schools or YMCAs or other organizations, then you want it time limited. And we'll talk more about that. And so a narrow time of public solicitation, it provides the focus and energy and enthusiasm that limitation of time enforces, and communications. And then also it's often branded. We would encourage you, if your annual fund does not have a name and branding and images and themes, and then you develop those, and they can add a lot of excitement for your annual campaign. So that's an overview of kind of annual giving versus annual campaign, and we'd love to hear questions or thoughts you might have as we wrap it up with some Q&A in a bit. Now, why is an annual fund important? Well, of course, one of the basis of every organization is different, but number one, the bottom line, and what percentage of your budget is coming from your annual fund or annual giving. It's the building block for a comprehensive development program. Really important. It's nurturing relationships with volunteers and donors. It's oftentimes the introduction to new friends, and just very vital. Telling the story, the opportunities that you have on a daily basis, but especially during the campaign time frame to tell the stories. You're cultivating donors to increase giving levels, and we'll talk more about that in the planning and execution stage. But you want donors over time to hopefully increase their giving. You want to have a pipeline of new donors, so soliciting new donors to broaden your base of support. The annual fund is vital because you can identify and develop your major gift prospects. So who are your future major donors? They're often, we've seen it many, many times, David and myself, someone's come in with a $100 or $500 annual gift, and then with your great work in cultivation, meaning you, our participants today, you realize a 7-figure gift 5 or 10 or maybe 20 years down the road. And then leadership development, it really provides some coaching and training for staff and volunteers to create a culture of philanthropy. So those are some of the reasons that the annual giving is important. And we mentioned, of course, that it really is the foundation of your fundraising program. One of the really exciting things is, and people shouldn't be afraid, but should embrace this, is that when you have an annual giving program, you're allowing your donors to vote. We say with their wallet, but these days it's with their electronic transfer or their automatic debit or whatever their method. But they're voting on your programs every year, so it gives you the opportunity to engage with them. If you're doing an appropriate and a great job, we all know that fundraising is about relationships, and relationships are two-way, and they're about conversations. So you build in opportunities for feedback in annual giving, whether it be the commitment card or online or phone-a-thon. We said the website earlier, email, personal solicitation. You want to have methods to ask them, how are we doing? What would you recommend? Who would you recommend? Why did you give for the first time? Why do you believe in our mission or our plans? So use the opportunity to, no matter what the gift level, to give the donor the opportunity to share and to learn more about them, and for them to feel like they're an important part of your mission. So annual giving, it can be fun and it should be fun. And part of it is, if you look at it as a relationship with a donor and having a conversation and getting this information, it really puts a really solid, positive perspective, excuse me, on your annual giving. And then, of course, it's the bread and butter. We mentioned that of any development program, and their renewable contributions for operating support during a fiscal year. Now, David will talk to us, lead our conversation on case development.
Hello, this is David Snow, and I'm delighted to be with you today. I'm going to talk about some of the details. As Jeff said, we're trying to hold this to 30 minutes. Each one of these topics we could actually expound on at great length. But I do want to talk about case development. And case development, I think, really is, what do you, if you were a prospective donor, what would you want to know? And it's really about anticipating the questions of the donor and being prepared to answer those in advance. So ultimately it comes down to is, why do we do what we do? Why is it important? Why is it worthy of support? And why now? Because the time element is really critical. That we need to establish in the donor's mind that today is the day of action. So case development really about anticipating questions such as these. Now, what is in the case statement and how do we go about writing it? You can answer all the questions on the preceding slide and it still might not be inspiring. It's really critical that we write in a way that's inspiring. How would you respond to this statement? So make it inspiring. You need to identify and validate the needs. You're really raising money for a cause, and that cause is to alleviate a certain need in your community. So being able to identify and validate that need is also critical in that case statement. The identified strategies that your organization is going to use to address those needs. That establishes the competency. Why is your organization uniquely positioned in your community to deal with that need? Likewise, we need to define within the case development and the case statement how we're measuring success. And that should not be just measured in dollars, but actually in the results. This is going to do what? Additionally, we want to have the goal based on need and capacity. If you have established a goal simply based on the amount of money raised last year plus 5%, that is not going to be inspiring to a donor when the donor asks you, well, how did this goal become? So base your goal on need and capacity. Additionally, you need to have a resource needed to raise this money. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But establish a firm budget, because your resources are limited. And we want to use those to the maximum of our abilities to increase the amount of donations we receive, so we will have the funds that are necessary to meet the needs that you've identified. And then ultimately, it's about showing how the donor can be part of your cause and of your mission. So it's really listening to your donors about what their interests are, what their needs are, and their values, and how they align with your organizations. And finally, I would suggest that you have that human touch in there. Those stories about life, how lives are changed because of your organization. How have you impacted the life of a child or a family in your community? And that is really what our donors are looking for. As I said, it's about aligning the donors' values, their desires, with your organization's values and your organization's needs. Yesterday, as we had the moon pass between us and the sun, we had that wow factor. And that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish here, is where we have perfect alignment between our donors and our organization, and create that wow. I'd like to now move to leadership development, and my first slide is on volunteer development. Why do we want to develop volunteers? Well, first of all, volunteers add credibility. Having the right people support your cause in your community is critical. They have influence. They have the ability to open doors that you and I do not have. And so therefore, we need those doors open. They can make that phone call. They can get that introduction for us. Additionally, as we ignite their passion, it will increase their gift to your organization. Additionally, we need to be continuing to be grooming our volunteers so that in future years, they will assume more responsibility for your annual campaigns. So if they're workers, captains, chairs, you want to continue to groom them. Additionally, they provide leverage. Most of us have small development staffs, and there's a limit to the number of calls that we can make as development staff. Volunteers give us a much wider opportunity to reach more people. So how do you develop these leaders? How do you groom them? It's really about seeing your work in action. So taking them actually to sites where you are providing the services of your organization. It's giving them opportunities to hear directly from the participants. Because what we really want to accomplish is that they develop within them their story about your organization. It's when they have talked to a young man who's going to college because of your organization. It's about talking to a mother about their child receiving treatment because of your organization. When they have that personal relationship and they can develop their own story, not the story you have given them, but they have their own story, and that they can then share with others. Likewise, we need to be developing our staff in staff development of leadership. Again, why? It's about implementing the plan that you have developed. We need total buy-in by the full organization of our plan. You're the expert, you develop the plan, we get the buy-in from the rest of the staff. It's about having those staff to pay attention to the details. Success is in the details, and therefore you need to bring the staff along so they have understanding of those details. It's about building beyond the development function. Again, you're limited. We need to expand to others in our organization. Likewise, others in your organization, because many of them have the direct relationship with participants and others, have significant influence, and we need to use their influence to help. Additionally, they will become more committed, and their passion for your cause will grow, and their personal gift will grow. And finally, we want to groom them for the future. As they move up in your organization, we want them to be spokesmen for financial development. Similar to our volunteers, it's about them understanding what your work is in action, and that's taking them to sites. It's about hearing directly from participants, and again, developing their own stories. Now, we need to analyze our current efforts. Where are our strengths in financial development? Where are our weaknesses, opportunities, and threats? And through that analysis, we will really be able to look at our performance versus our goals, our expenses, our cost per gift, both in dollars and time, trend lines, what's happened over the last 5 or 6 years, why did we have this bump or why did we have this fall, looking at retentions, upgrades. These are the kinds of things that will help you focus on developing the proper plan. Now, in your plan development, it really is around your organization's mission, vision, values, and the principles of fundraising that you have committed to. The components of the annual campaign, and these vary with your organization, the methods and strategies of in-person apps, phone apps, direct mail, email, various social media type of connections, events. And it's also defining who are your natural constituents. These natural constituents will, how you look at those constituents and how you categorize them, you will come up with different strategies to address them. Now, the plan development, the benefits of your annual fund plan, it really organizes your work day to day. And it heads off interference. By having a plan that the volunteers and other staff have committed to, it sets you up as the expert, and you're going to have less likelihood of interference of someone coming up with the brilliant idea midway through your campaign. And all of a sudden, you're off track from where you should be. So the plan is really there to keep you on track. It builds awareness among your internal and your external audiences. The plan serves as an evaluation tool and provides continuity from one year to the next, which is also critical. Additionally, the plan is really important to us about where to invest our scarce resources. And I've just picked out 4 areas here I wanted to talk about. As again, we had in that original slide, in this plan, we need to have recruitment and training. I picked some of these areas to talk about. On the communication plan, no one has contributed to an organization because you have the slickest brochure. You want to have professional materials, but let's analyze how much those professional materials will cost. Likewise, a video may be important in your setting. A video isn't necessary. It's a very expensive proposition. If it's part of your communication plan and you know how you're going to use it and what the end results of that are going to be, then you can put a cost-benefit analysis to the cost of that video. But just to do a video and then think that's going to generate significant revenues is not good use of our resources. Social media is really the growth area which has great potential for us if we can stay current. And again, people think there's no cost to social media because we can send it out so easily. The cost is in the development, and there is a cost to social media. Another area I wanted to talk about briefly is recognition plan. For the most part, your donors do not want another plaque. So make a recognition plan that is personal to the donor. What can you give them that they can't buy? And how does this relate to your organization? And I have a number of examples in my office of really wonderful recognition pieces. And they relate directly to the cause of which these people gave. For example, we were raising money for a educational program at a quarry. We actually had small stones cut from the quarry and mounted and gave to the donors. So it directly related to what they had given their money for. Same way we had where we built a Miracle League baseball field, and we gave out baseballs and baseball bats appropriately inscribed. So, make it personal, make it something that's related to your organization, something that they can't buy, not another plaque. Spend money on your recruitment and training plan. And finally, spend money on your donor management system. Keeping track of your donors is critical for you to understand where you are and where you've been and where you want to go. And one of the other things I think you really need to spend time on is being able to educate your donors and board members and your executives on overhead. And in my example here, I show us raising $1 million with a 10% cost of raising that money, which nets us $900,000. My other example shows us raising $2 million with a 20% overhead. Normally, our thought would be, well, the lower overhead is the superior operation. But in fact, this one nets $1.6 million for your organization. So the question is, which is better? And I think we need to be, as long as we're good stewards, and we're not viewed as wasting money or being extravagant, it's really that net dollar that we need to be looking at. And we need to be educating our leadership, both volunteer and staff leadership, that overhead, in fact, can be a good thing if it, in fact, generates more money for us. A couple other things in the plan development: set a goal and budget, establish a fundraising team, create a timeline, analyze the donor base, stewardship and outreach, determine the necessary tools. Is it a video? Is it print material? What are the tools you're going to need? Launch the campaign, acknowledge the donors, track progress, and keep improving. Jeff, you want to?
This is just a good illustration. He's terrible at making decisions, and David mentioned earlier that one of the benefits of a plan and having a plan that covers those areas is you know what has to happen when, and you don't have to get into these conversations and opportunities.
Great. So let's talk about executing the plan really briefly. It's really a commitment to the plan, both by the volunteers and your fellow staff members. And that's by they see that you have the expertise to develop the plan. The plan then gives us accountability to our calendar and to our goals. So we want to have benchmarks along the way on those areas. You need clear job descriptions to your volunteers and your staff. What is a worker expected to do in your campaign? What is the chair expected to do in the campaign? The more clear direction you can provide them, the greater likelihood is that they are going to perform as expected. Maintain that timeline. It's important to communicate. Frequent updates to your staff and volunteers will keep them motivated and will also keep them from calling you saying, where are we? You want to keep those staff and volunteers motivated and updated. Reaffirm the importance of the work. During the time of the campaign, it can also become very tedious. So it's very important for them to constantly understand why they have committed to do this. So the importance of your work. Stay with the plan. And finally, make it enjoyable. Celebrate the success. When you get that pledge that's significantly more than you were actually expecting, let others know about it. Celebrate and move quickly past the disappointments. You know, in most capital campaigns, we always want to have 3 to 4 donors for every potential gift that we're expecting. We know we're going to get a lot of no's in our work, and we should not allow a no to sidetrack us and that disappointment to take away from what we need to be focused on. Finally, create smaller sub-campaigns. Use multiple channels. Text, optimize this ways to keep informed. Tell stories. Stories are a way that people connect with each other, and they can remember stories easier than they can just a general conversation. Foster sharing between volunteers and other staff. Make donating easy. The easier we can make the processes, the likelihood is we'll get that gift and we'll get the renewed gift the next year. Personalize the ask amounts. As much as possible, make the ask amount reasonable for that person. Do your homework. Do the follow-up. Jeff.
Great. And then some of this to kind of recap here, some of the keys to increasing effectiveness are the sound plan that David mentioned, the focus. You know, we all have limited time and limited resources. And so, you know, every day when you're focused on the annual fund, what is it that is the most important 1 or 2 things to do? Start with those and accomplish those. And having that plan allows you to be focused. So when new opportunities arise and people want to add special events and other things, that you can get back to saying, no, we're focused on our plan and direction. The board support and involvement, no matter large or small organization, the board, we talked about the personal asks. Well, the boards are certainly personal asks for any annual giving program. So they've got to be engaged, and they've got to be engaged in asking. And some organizations, you might have, in terms of volunteer engagement, it may stop at that. They're large national organizations, but those boards are certainly involved in the effort. Involving donors. Remember that the best cultivation is involvement and engagement, and they're your future future leaders. And one of the most important things is the research repeatedly shows, several studies, that households that volunteer give more, and people give more to where they are volunteers. So that's a very powerful message to get people involved, involve donors, and your giving will increase. And then David mentioned upgrades. So you got, a small annual gift is not a stop and think gift. It's something they're going to make for a friend. And then as that grows, it's something that they've got to really be bought into your mission, involved, and engaged as that gift gets larger. And then, of course, and David mentioned this, just to reemphasize, I just love this cartoon. And as you can see that at St. Paul's, we consider not sending a gift acknowledgement one of the 7 deadly sins. So we can never say thank you enough, and we want to say thank you more than please. One of the things that we want to remind you, we talk about plans and details and budgets and job descriptions, but that is that you are inviting people to experience the joy of giving, and never underestimate the power of giving. It shines like a beacon throughout humanity and brightens the lives of all it touches. One of life's greatest rules, and something we believe firmly, you cannot hold a torch to light another's path without brightening your own. So giving is a greater blessing to the donor, even as it is to those who benefit from the great mission work that your organization accomplishes. David and I would love a quick presentation today, but would love to have an email from you if you have a question as a follow-up.
Great. Well, you guys, talk about a lot of meat in there. Really great stuff. I'm going to actually switch the screen back over. And then really this is going to be your guys' time now to ask some questions, and take advantage of the time that David and Jeff have given us. Thank you guys for that great, insightful thing. Sometimes overwhelming, which is kind of why we try to give you kind of small things to chew on when we go. The first question I want to deal with quickly is, yes, we do record all our webinars, and then we make those available. And I'm assuming you guys will allow us to share your slides.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we'll make those available to you. Usually what we do is a couple days after our webinars, we'll send you an email with a recording, and then we'll send you a PDF of our slides that we shared. So that will be something we'll do for you. I would like to kind of start off, Jeff and David, can you maybe just spend a minute or two and just talk about some of the changes that have taken place in fundraising when it comes to annual giving? For those of us who've been in fundraising for a long time know that there was the old fundraising pyramid. There was this model of the pyramid, and now that pyramid's kind of turned into a funnel. I've talked about that in some of my webinars. But can you talk about, some of the changes and how that's affected annual giving or programs?
Well, I think one trend is that the number of donations, the number of organizations that an individual donor supports has actually decreased. So where in the past a donor might have written numerous small checks to 10 or 12 organizations, today they may only be supporting 3 or 4 organizations, but they're supporting them at a higher level. So one of the key questions that I always try to work in a conversation with the donor is to determine if my organization is one of his top 3 organizations or not. And if not, then I'm really trying to figure out how do I position myself to become that. Because I know at some point, if I'm number 10, 11, or 12, there's a real possibility that he will not or she will not be renewing the gift. So I think thinking about how do we position ourselves to be one of the top 3 or 4 organizations for that donor is critical.
Good. So we have a question from Karen for you guys, which is the overall plan to donation success is really what?
I'm sorry, could you restate that?
The overall plan to donation success is really what?
Well, I think the real key is to find individuals that share your passion, your organization's passion, and want to align themselves with your organization. So, you know, when I'm talking to a potential donor, I'm really trying to listen to that donor to understand what that donor really wants to accomplish with their donation. You know, what is it about them that motivates them to give? And, you know, is it kids? Is it a medical issue? Is it a relative that drowned? You know, where do they really have passion? And then I try to determine how our organization can align with them. So I think the real key to success is alignment. And I mean, there are many good donors that simply don't align with your organization. And, you know, you may continue to get a small gift, but at some point that person will probably not continue to be giving to you. And so try to identify the ones that can align with your organization, your cause, your mission, and then I think you will have success.
Great. Here's another question. Thank you, by the way. It's a lot there, but really, really great answer. If you were to give 1 to 2 top tips for engaging donors via social media or effective use of that communication platform, what would those be? That's a great question, by the way.
It is. They're all great. It's engagement. You know, one of the things that I think just know where your donors are in social media. And one of the things that scares college students and high school students today is, for example, with Facebook, that there are people our age on Facebook every day, and the younger people tend not to be. So know where your donors are, but make it a relationship and a conversation. You're not just sharing your information. You want to engage with them and capture their attention and have a conversation. So that's the most important, is to know where your donors are and to engage with them. Don't make it a two-way, no matter what platform.
Here's another question about, do you guys have an opinion about, there's a lot of debate about whether or not direct mail versus email campaigns are more effective, less effective, both. Well, what's your take on that?
Yeah. Well, it's back to knowing your donors. Okay. What we find overall is that mail, as a communications and solicitation tool, still can be very effective. Do you have emails? Are your donors on social media? Are you going to capture them? So the mail versus email would be, how good are your records? Because when we typically look at a client and their emails are changing more often than addresses, and Dan, you know more about this, but the attrition and keeping that current is a huge challenge. Yeah. We'd say we recommend doing both, primarily almost all the time, but leading with where your donors are.
And I think having good records, understanding what the open rate is, what the of that email, what is an acceptable return gift on that email. It's to me, it's a constant analysis of our work. And I think what Jeff was also talking about, understanding your donors. If I'm going for a older demographic, the likelihood is they're going to open their mail at a greater rate than millennials, for example.
Yeah.
I'm not sure my sons go to their post office box once a month.
Yeah. So really, the part of that is doing both, really, right? Based off of your donors.
Yeah, it's doing both, focusing on where they are, and no matter what you do is repetition. Because if any of us think that, how many of us, I spend hours on the weekend, and I shouldn't confess this on the webinar, I go through my email to see what I've missed during the week or what I've deleted by mistake.
Yeah.
And then likewise, we met yesterday with the foundation leader, and she's going to raise money from her alumni, and they're all under 40. And she goes, I don't even open my mail. I'm not sure I know what mail is. You know, we have good emails for 90% of our alumni. So with their campaign, they're going to lead with email. They may do, you know, oversized postcard or something that might grab someone's attention as it falls out of their mailbox. But even with the email, it's going to take more than one appeal, more than one correspondence to.
Yeah. Oh, good. Thank you. Here, it's a good question here, Allison. Are there fundraising strategies that you would particularly recommend for new nonprofits which are just getting started? I love this question.
Well, I think the key is who will be your constituents? Who's the natural constituents for that nonprofit? And I have a friend who just took the leadership of a juvenile diabetes foundation, and he was telling me that they did not have names and addresses of grandparents. Well, grandparents would be a very natural constituency group for that type of organization. So, you know, who are your natural constituents? And as Jeff said, you know, do you have the emails, addresses of those?
And I don't know, Jeff, you may know this or not. I don't know if Jerry Panis coined this term, but the term that I talk a lot about here at Aplos is asking the right person at the right time for the right amount.
For the right project.
For the right project, correct. Yeah, that's right. That's number 4. I don't know if that's a Jerry Panis thing, but I know that that's floated around in the fundraising circle. And I really, for me personally as a fundraiser, have found that to be really effective, meaning that it doesn't really matter the size of your nonprofit. You don't have to be a large university or a St. Jude's Children's Hospital, but at the end of the day, it's making sure you're identifying the right people that share that passion for what you do. Making sure that you've introduced them to the organization, so you don't want to be too quick in asking them, and asking them for the right amount, for the right project. That's for me, that's kind of something that I've been able to share here at Aplos for all sides of our folks.
That was good. Right. Good advice.
Yeah, thanks. All right, you guys. Any other questions? Once again, we want to just remind you that we are recording this, and we will have slides available to you. Jeff and Dave, do you have any other kind of final thoughts that you would like to share with us as we kind of end our time together?
No, it's really just thank you for the great work that you do, because to Aplos and to our participants today, because you have a high calling, and fundraising is not always easy. And some of the things that we talk about, the treating volunteers or staff, but stay positive and have a plan and persevere, because these things that we discussed today do work, and they will work if you stay focused and you're positive and you keep persevering. And as David said, in fundraising, there are setbacks. We do get rejection. That's a part of the game, part of life, and just move beyond it, because there are incredible donors who want to invest in your worthy mission and great work. And through the annual fund, it's just the foundation of how you discover these people and establish those wonderful relationships that will bring them and you great joy, as well as those you serve. So we just are grateful to be a part of this, and
thanks.
Would welcome anyone connecting with us on social media. And Dan, you were kind to mention our Lighthouse blogs and podcasts. So
there's great resources out there. Both free and obviously if you're an organization that's ready to kind of take maybe your campaign to the next level, or some other types of training, I would encourage you to reach out to Lighthouse Counsel, or check out their website. I found a couple of your blogs and your podcasts to be very cool and very, very practical. There's lots of here at Aplos. We have our Aplos Academy. We offer a ton of free resources, and as well as there's other things out there. So I encourage you to maybe engage us on Twitter. I know that Lighthouse, Counsel, and Jeff both put out great stuff, as well as we like to try to share information out there. So thank you, everybody, for taking time out of your busy schedules. I want to thank Jeff and David once again for your time and your sharing your expertise, being willing to do that. I know how busy you guys are. Once again, I remind everybody that on September 7th, which is a Thursday, will be our next educational webinar. We'll have Jay Frost, who was identified as one of the top 25 fundraising experts in the country recently, and he'll be sharing, we'll be talking about how to deal with major gifts for small shops. So if you're a small operation and you think major gifts are just for the big universities and the hospitals and the big guys, you'll see that that's different. So with that, we want to again thank you for your time, and I wish you guys a great day and best in your fundraising. Stay positive and have fun out there. So thanks again, you guys.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.